Welcome back to Wojo's Greenhouse and Garden Center here in Ortonville. This is George, and we're ready for another episode of the Green Team. The topics we're going to talk about today are both current events that are happening here at the Garden Center with people that are coming in and asking questions, and also interjecting a few things we talk about as we prepare our gardens for the fall and ultimately the winter. A topic we talk about weekly, and that's watering. We have had basically a drought condition here in our area for the last 2.5 months. We had ample rain in March, April, May, the start of June, and then July and August have been very, very dry. September hasn't helped us at all either. So it's needed to add water to your new plants and even existing plants. Some people ask, when do I have to water? You have to know your soil, you have to know the condition, but even established plants, if they've been in the ground for several years, hot, dry conditions will cause those to dry out also. So with that, watering is critical, and we encourage you to keep watering right until the ground freezes, probably around Thanksgiving Day, especially for the broadleaf evergreens, the evergreen trees. We want those to be hydrated going into the winter time. Without that moisture in the roots, chances of making it successfully through the winter are less. So with that, watering is important. Fall is an excellent time to plant, as this chart from Willoway Nursery in Ohio talks about. Fall is fantastic for planting. It allows an opportunity to get the plants in the ground, and root establishment, there's a key temperature of 40 degrees that roots will develop as long as the temperature is 40 degrees. And right now the temperature is well above that. As we get into October, November, the air temperature will be cooler, but it takes longer for the ground to actually cool down. So that as long as that ground temperature is 40 degrees, you have nice new root development. Contrasted with spring, when the ground is frozen and beginning to warm up, it takes longer to warm the soil in the springtime. So consequently, root development in the spring is delayed, where in the fall, it's an excellent time to plant. So we talk about the fall as being that great time, and as you see here behind me, we have a marvelous selection of plants for you here at Wojo's. We also talk about our friend, the deer, and protecting our tree trunks from the deer, so that as they rub their antlers, they don't take the bark off. We've talked about the plastic tree guards that are important, and also as we look to this plant over here on my right, your left, the arborvitae. This is a snack food for the deer. They turn this into a Tootsie Pop in the wintertime. When they get hungry, they will eat and eat and eat, so that you end up into the center stems and a little green ball up on top where they can't reach. So consequently, it's important to use a spray or some kind of a fence, either a mechanical fence, a barrier, or a chemical spray to keep the deer away, so that they don't make these look real irregular. Contrasted with the juniper, which is a plant that the deer don't like. So if you're looking for a plant to put in, if you have a lot of deer in your landscape, juniper, the deer don't go after, the arborvitaes they do. These are a couple of the products. Again, we've talked about these before, the Repelzol and the liquid fence, that both work as a deterrent for the arborvitaes or for other plants. So the protection from the deer, again, is something that is important. Now is an excellent time to be top dressing your lawns. If you have bare spots in your yard, again, the folks from Michigan State, the turf department said if the size of the area is, let's say, the size of a baseball, more than likely fall fertilizer and watering will allow that turf to grow and fill in that hole. If it's larger than that, you want to look to a top dressing with seed You want to scratch the surface with a rake or some kind of an implement to create a groove or an area for the seed to make contact with the soil, and then keep it watered, keep it moist, so that that new seed gets a good start and can help make your lawn look very nice in the springtime. Another topic that we want to talk about, and this is in the idea of protection for the winter time. For both of these plants right here, the upright junipers and the upright arborvitaes, both of these have multiple stems coming out. And what can happen in a heavy ice or snowstorm is that the ice and snow will cause these to split and separate, both for the arborvitae and for the junipers. What we recommend is tying these up, loosely binding them up so that they have protection in case there is that ice or snowstorm. That's simply a matter of just taking some twine and loosely binding up the branches so that the stem or the upright growth of these doesn't get pulled down by the heavy snow. And we do that the same thing over here with the arborvitae. The same principle. Again, coming in and wanting to keep these from separating. And it's just a matter of just lightly binding them up. You don't want to pull them tight because that can damage the tree, but lightly binding them together works very nicely. If you want to use a green colored string, it blends in very nicely with the plant, so it's not noticeable. My twine here is a little bit noticeable, but the green twine makes it look like it blends in together. A topic that came up this week, I happened to fill in over in the perennial area, and somebody asked about clematis. When do you prune clematis? And that gets to be a little bit interesting because on our signage we talk about 1, 2, 3, type 1, type 2, or type 3. Type 1 clematis is one that blooms on what's described as old wood, last year's growth. It's an early spring flower, and that pruning is done after it flowers. The second type is a type that is an early summer or repeat bloomer, blooming on both early or new or old wood, and that you do after flowering, either in the fall or the winter. The third type is one that blooms in late summer. It grows on new wood, and pruning again can be hard in the early springtime. So that is a little bit of information about clematis. We sell primarily type 2 and type 3, but we have more information here at the store to help you out. We'll take a break and come back.
Canine Stray Rescue does just that. Rescue stray dogs for new families. But they need your help. Become a volunteer at Canine Stray Rescue League of Michigan. Take dogs for walks, help them socialize with others, and help them get adopted. Fill out an application and help a family add a new member today.
Welcome back for segment number 2 of the Green Team. A topic that also ties in with that winter preparation is using a tree wrap or a tree guard. Many times people will come in and say my maple tree or my cherry tree has split. The bark over the course of the winter, they come come in their landscape in the spring and they notice a splitting of the bark on their maple tree or cherry tree. What happens is that in the wintertime, the sun beats down from either the south or west side, warms the bark, causing it to separate. Coolness causes it to come back together, but that ongoing splitting and contraction causes the bark to split or separate. This tree wrap that you simply wrap around the bark of the tree allows for a more consistent temperature so that you don't have that splitting. So if you have those types of trees that are susceptible to that splitting, this is an excellent product to use to help prevent that. So we wanted to talk about that. An interesting topic that came up, first of all, when I saw this online on a Facebook page. Something about the Netherlands. What's happening over in the Netherlands in Holland with the Dutch, and what they're doing with agriculture in the world. The Netherlands is a very, very small country, but as you would see if you pick up this edition of National Geographic, the September issue, it talks about tiny Holland feeding the world. And when you open this up, one of the pages shows a farmer and his home surrounded by acres of greenhouses. They have done extensive work and have been extensive in their agricultural industry. This again is another aerial photograph showing the expansiveness, and the yellow that you see in the picture are lights in the evening. It's the supplemental lighting that allows the plants to grow in greenhouses. The Netherlands is now the number 2 grower in the world of food, and it ranks number 1, I believe it's tomatoes and cucumbers, and there's one other crop that it ranks very, very high. There's an interesting picture they had here also, that chicken is coming into large demand. And this is like a hotel, so to speak, with many, many stories or layers. Chickens growing freely, not in cages, allowing them to raise their chickens in a humane environment and one that is very profitable for their country. So there's many, many things that are happening in the Netherlands that are impacting the world. There was another chart here that showed how, if you look at the world and coming from the Netherlands in this area, how their agricultural expertise is spreading out to other nations across the world, that they're having a huge impact. So we'll continue to watch the Dutch and what they're doing, and hopefully we'll be able to utilize some of their growing methods here in the States. So that's just a little bit of tidbit of information about agriculture across the world. This week I had a guest come in with a glass jar with some insects in it. He said, "These things are attacking my squash plants." And I don't grow squash personally, so I had to ask one of our employees that has been involved in our vegetables here for many, many years, "Do you know what these insects are?" And he said, "I think they're squash bugs." So we did a search on our phone, and sure enough, they were squash bugs. And it was interesting when I was talking with this guest about the squash bugs. I said, first of all, have you used any insects or any insecticides on the insects? You know, I don't like to use those chemicals. So I came back to him with 3 organic chemicals as options that he could use to help control that. Or I said, your first choice that is truly organic is to hand pick them off the plants. He said, well, I can't do that. Well, then your choice is either 2, 3, or 4 using products that we have here from Bonide, Captain Jack's insecticidal soap, and also a dust that you can spray on the plants. So we do have some organic options for guests that are concerned about the harsher chemicals. We do have those options here at Wojo's, but we can take care of squash bugs. Another topic that I want to talk about, and this is a very broad one, and it's one that we're just going to scratch the surface on today. And if you have pets or if you have horses, it's important that you really study this and get the information that you need to have plants in your landscape that are not going to negatively impact either your pets, your horses, and or yourself. And it's the topic of poisonous plants. This particular handout talks about 23 common plants that are poisonous to pets. Such things as aloe vera, amaryllis, azaleas, baby breath, begonias, carnations, castor beans, chrysanthemums, cyclamen, daffodils, and going down at the bottom, tulips and yews. And I want to talk about the yew because this is a topic that I learned about the hard way. Not that it impacted a guest that we gave her that information, but a guest came in very distraught. They had done clipping of their landscape and they had pruned the yew shrubs. And they thought, nice, green, lush foliage, we'll just throw it over the fence into the corral and give the horses something to chew on. They came back about a half hour later, sadly to find the horses laying on their side, not doing well, and they ended up dying because of eating the foliage off the yew plant. So that's why it's important, if you do have animals or pets, or even for us humans, to learn what is poisonous and what is not. This came about this week when one of our employees came in and I was trying to show her some plants, and I showed her the winterberry holly, which is a beautiful plant. Deciduous holly has beautiful orange fruit along the stems, makes a dynamic Christmas decoration, and also the birds eat it in the wintertime. But the only problem is it's toxic to horses. And we did a search on that on my phone, and we found that truly that was the case. So the idea of poisonous plants is something that is a concern. And if you do have horses, Michigan State has several handouts that you can go to. This one is probably about 15 pages, poisonous plants for all sorts of pets, horses, and humans. So some excellent resources here for you if you do have pets, so that you don't put them in jeopardy within your landscape. We'll take a break and come back in a moment. Our last segment is going to cover some topics out here, and then we're going to move in towards the greenhouse and talk about some fall bulbs and some other fall decorating ideas. But first of all, a topic that we have talked about off and on since the program got started, and that's how you protect against the emerald ash borer. That is something that has been around, an insect, since about 2002. I just started in the industry, and it was something that was peculiar because nobody in the United States knew what it was. And it was an entomologist, scientist out of Michigan State University, Dr. Dave Roberts, that was able to contact scientists, entomologists from Europe to examine the insect and find out what it was. And it was identified as the emerald ash borer that came into the United States on shipping pallets from China. And it basically got its start here in Michigan. And sadly to say, this is an article that was in the Washington Post this past week. Scientists say that the ash tree species is being pushed to the brink of extinction. There are 5 varieties of ash tree that across the United States have been pretty much decimated, and because of that emerald ash borer. It doesn't go after all species. I have 3 trees in my own yard that my dad planted probably 40 years ago that are growing nicely today, never impacted by that emerald ash borer. And I haven't used the Bear product on it either. I've just waited to see if I saw some telltale signs, and then I would begin using this. But in my case, it hasn't been affected. But for, like I say, at least 5 species of the ash trees across the United States, they are on the verge of extinction. So something we've talked about earlier. Another thing that we've talked about on and off is the oak wilt. And by our chart here, we are now in a low risk time period until the end of October, and then we get into the safest period for pruning or cutting down oak trees from November 1st until March 14th. So for the oak wilt, to minimize its impact, you have these different times that you can cut. You don't cut in this high risk time. If you can avoid it in the low risk, and do all of your pruning in the safest time. I had a lady, I answered a phone call this week, and she was concerned about her oak trees, and it sounded like that's what she had. I want to talk about some events coming up here at Wojo's. We hope that you'll visit Wojo's website and also Facebook page. We've talked about the Fall Fun Days. By the time this airs, the Ortonville Fun Days will be over, but the ones at Garden Splendors up in Davison, October 7th and October 14th, will still be on the calendar. And also here at this store, October 21st, we have a decoration of a pumpkin with succulent plants. And then at both stores, there is a painting class for a snowman decoration. So both of those are available on our website for registration. We encourage you to check our Facebook page, our website, for events that are happening at Wojo's. Broadleaf evergreens. This is a topic that we'll mention again, but with broadleaf evergreens, protecting them for the winter time. It would be your rhododendron, your holly, your boxwoods, the euonymus, to keep those broadleaf hydrated so they don't dry out. A lot of planting a broadleaf evergreen has to do with proper location. It's about location, location, location. An eastern exposure where the plant gets morning sun, afternoon shade. Location where the house or some other structure blocks the west wind in the wintertime. And then lastly, a nice organic, well-drained soil. For that idea of those locations, if you need some help on that, if it isn't on, let's say not on the east side, burlapping your plant will help to prevent wind damage. We also have a product called Wilt Stop or Wilt Proof that's a clear sealant that you spray on the foliage, and that helps to seal the moisture in. So those 2 products are very helpful, and we'll talk about that again in the future. We're going to take a break and go over and see some fall color in the tree and shrub area, and then we'll go in and talk about some fall bulb planting and some interesting facts about one type of bulb. Thanks, Russell, for joining me out here in the tree and shrub area. I wanted to show several plants that have taken on a very special fall color. One of them is beginning to lose its leaves, but we can see this nice orangey gold color of the witch hazel. The witch hazel that flowered early spring is now in its fall color, and a very, very special color. Down here in front we have a plant called Sweet Spire. We sell two varieties of it. This happens to be Henry's Garnet, and we also have another variety called Little Henry Sweet Spire. This has a fragrant flower in the springtime, but what is exciting about this is that its fall foliage is as bright as a burning bush. When we take a look at the nice color that these are taking on, you can see this sharp red color that makes it a dynamic plant within the landscape. So we think of the Sweet Spire as a nice plant to add to your landscape for some special fall color. Another plant that is very, very special, and that is the oak leaf hydrangea. This particular variety happens to be Ruby Slippers. The oak leaf hydrangea has nice large green foliage shaped a little bit like an oak leaf, consequently how it got its name. It has a large white flower that will turn pink in the fall, but what's especially outstanding about this is this bright red color that the leaves take on in the fall. And we've got some very vivid examples of the oak leaf hydrangea and that special foliage. So whether we're talking about witch hazel, Sweet Spire, or oak leaf hydrangea, excellent plants for adding in your landscape. This particular plant right here is one that is very special to me. This is a flowering dogwood tree called Samaritan. This has a nice variegated leaf, and you can see now the red fall fruit of the dogwood tree. This particular tree I have at home, but I also donated this tree 2 years ago to Independence Elementary in Clarkston. The principal there was retiring, and my grandson Dane is a student there, and we planted one of these trees on the school property. So this is a Samaritan dogwood, and again, beautiful foliage. We'll go inside quickly and show some ideas. We're now in the greenhouse area where we have our pansies for the fall. This particular flyer talks about planting mums and pansies over bulbs for fall color. What a great idea to have this on top of your bulbs, and then bulbs come up in the spring right through the remains of the pansies. So with that, a great idea, using the pansies on top of the bulbs. Last topic for today is kind of a warm-up for something we'll talk about more in the future, and that's our spring flowering bulbs. But I want to talk about this particular variety, Fritillaria. We have two different colors here, a red and a yellow. If you have chipmunks or other ground critters, this particular bulb emits an odor that in the soil those critters don't like. So by intermixing these bulbs within your other bulbs that the critters may go after, they'll stay away. So this is a bulb that we're going to talk more about in the future, but I wanted to whet your appetite, and if you play on the computer, do a little research, and we'll talk about this next time.